True crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffindaffer. For those of you who haven't been with us, I have 28 years of federal law enforcement, years of investigative experience with the FBI, mainly 25 years, and prior to that with the Office of Inspector General for the Department of Agriculture, which, by the way, was amazing work, I have to say. You wouldn't believe what those OIGs do. We'll get into that at another time. But tonight we're going to talk about three very important cases, I think. The one I want to start out with is Noah Presgrove. Now, for those of you who might not have followed the Noah Presgrove case, he was a young man, only 19 years old, and he was found deceased on a road that was fairly isolated. He was naked except for mismatched shoes. He had a tooth that was found some distance away from him, clumps of hair found near him and some distance away. He suffered broken ribs, broken collarbone, I believe it was. I want to make sure it wasn't his scapula, but I believe it was his broken collarbone. He had severe internal damage. He also had severe head damage, also bruising all around his face and various abrasions. He was really beat or suffered blunt force trauma, we'll say it that way, to a extremely vivid and life-threatening, in fact, death-causing degree. He had been on a several-day binger, if you will, partying with fellow friends for days on end. So there is no doubt that he was highly, highly intoxicated. He had also suffered an accident, if you will, on an ATV well prior to him being found. And that could have caused some, not the life-threatening damage, but it certainly could have caused a lot of the bruising, possibly even the broken ribs, some of the damage that was not life-threatening. And that was earlier in the day prior to him being found. Now, this is the situation. Even with what I've said there, I think you can glean something happened to this young man. Whether it was something accidental that happened, which I think is a big possibility that this could actually be a motor vehicle type strike or accident, and that he was left, or that he was truly beaten to death in some way by friends, by associates, by a stranger, we don't know, and left there, or that this was some absolute accident. Now, I struggle with the accident piece of it. It doesn't make sense. If you're in a drunken situation, I suppose he could have left the party, grabbed, somebody's shoe and put it on, left naked. By the way, his shorts were nearby. Again, a tooth. To cause a tooth to be dislodged from the mouth would mean that he was struck very severely with much force, as he probably before laid on that road. Now, this is the other interesting information. The autopsy has been completed. We have not seen, at least I have not seen, the toxicology report. And in that autopsy, they found his death the result of all these blunt force trauma injuries. But they refused to make a determination whether it was a homicide or not. In other words, a homicide isn't necessarily a murder, just so everyone understands that. It just means killed by another. So it could have been unintentional. As I said, it could have been a hit and run situation, something like that. That is an unintentional homicide. But they refuse to say, the medical examiner has not said. So not only have they not given the manner of death, but they really haven't gone into exactly where these blunt force trauma injuries where they resulted from. And that to me is also very concerning. In other words, are we talking strikes to the face, like human blows with hands? Are we talking about a bat or another sort of instrument like that? Or are we talking about motor vehicle? Um, it's really disconcerting, I think, that the ME from this crime scene, which absolutely was horrific, this young man, about 6 foot 1 inches tall, a complete athlete, wrestled, played football, a very, very good-looking young man, um, that he was just left there or straggled out on this road and died there. That's never going to be a belief of mine, at least from what we have. Why? Because his tooth was found some distance from him. That tells me that whatever happened to him that resulted in his death, why is that tooth so far away from him? Why are his pants near him but not on him? What about these clumps of hair? How did they get somehow taken out of the body? Think about your head. If something, the force that it would to take clumps of hair from your head, it boggles my mind that this is not being full on investigated as something that it would seem to be would be foul play in some way. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they beat him up and left him there, but it could mean that he was struck by a vehicle and left there. He was found in the early morning hours the next day. So, what happened that night to result in severe, severe head trauma, multiple bruises, broken ribs, as I said, broken clavicle? Something caused all of that would have been really a severe injury. Now, law enforcement doesn't really seem to be acting on this case at this point. In fact, it's his family. It's Noah's family that has been conducting their own private investigation. And I always find it so sad, honestly, when families have to expend the money, the resources, the time, the pain, and go through everything because they don't have the answers. And this is just one of these cases that they need answers. And law enforcement agents and officers, and when I say agents, it's because this happened in Oklahoma. There are state agencies, in this case, the Oklahoma State Police, that could have assisted in this and helped to provide answers. The local authorities, we're the ones trained, that have gone through years and years and years of school. When I say that, I mean continuing education that you constantly have to do, specialized classes in homicide investigation, specialized classes in class reconstruction, all of these sorts of resources that exist within these law enforcement entities. And yet we have no determination. This happened in September of 2023. Where is the direction here? Where? That's why I really wanted to feature that, and then of course go into Caleb's case as well, and then a new case, which is Bryce and Dingler, because I just fear that we're not going to get answers in some of these cases. I mean, I understand when you're looking at a case like Sebastian Rogers, which, by the way, I hope everybody is continuing to shine the light on Sebastian Rogers' face and on his name on your particular platforms. But there you don't have a body. So you're missing a very key piece of evidence to develop what happened. That's not what we have here. We have so many clues, so many clues at the scene. We have so many individuals that were in and around him for the days leading up to his tragic discovery. We have the ATV, law enforcement does, that he was involved in the accident on. I mean, he was able to walk into the party afterwards. So while he might have had a broken rib, but been so highly intoxicated, he didn't feel that or suffer from that like he normally would have. I don't understand why there can't be a better determination made on this case. I'm going to just check my notes and make sure I didn't miss anything. Let's see. I think I hit on everything that we know in this case. Oh, another thing that I found very interesting. If you look at the case, other cases where there's been motor vehicle accidents, in those cases, they're found in various positions, right? Because it's how they're found right after they're hit. So if you look at the Stephen Smith case, we've all seen pictures of his body laying out there. And typically, I've just never heard of, seen. If anybody else has, I would love to hear from you about it. But he was found, Noah Presgrove was found in the fetal position. So let's think about this. If you're hit by a vehicle and you're not placed there, I find it very unusual that you would be in that, fetal position, which is when you're hunched in this sort of way, your knees are brought up to your chest. I just found that also to be very interesting. It's a possibility, obviously, he was hit and survived for some period of time. His injuries didn't kill him right away, and he retracted into that fetal position. But what does that tell me? That tells me if this was a hit and run, and I have to say, many of these injuries are consistent with something that blunt of a force, other than getting beaten by a baseball bat. I mean, you're talking about all these very serious bone breakages, lacerations, severe head trauma, so much so that he died. So I think a lot of his injuries, at least to me, seem indicative of being struck possibly by a vehicle and then retracting into that fetal position as he sadly died. But why was he naked? Why did he have mismatched shoes? So much of this doesn't make sense, but none of it makes sense to equal an accident. That doesn't make sense. You're going to walk this long distance from where this party took place onto this road, strip off all your clothes, and that's where you're going to die? No, it's not sitting right. From an investigative eye, it makes no sense. And this is one of those cases that I really hope the family gets some answers, because right now it's been months, going on a year, and they still don't have any answers. And it's really, really disconcerting that the ME in this case cannot, again, an ME investigation, a lot of people think, oh, they just look at the body. No, they don't. A true ME investigation concerns a lot of interviews with law enforcement, a view of that crime scene area, an intense view of all police documents and reports pertaining to what happened, the report pertaining to this ATV accident earlier in that day. Obviously, his toxicology is huge, a part of this investigation. I just find it disconcerting that they haven't been able to come out and more strongly say, they've said undetermined, but more strongly say, listen, this is a homicide. It was caused by another. That could be in a vehicle or with other instrumentation, but it just means it's not an accident. It's not a suicide. So I'm very concerned about this case. Also, the family had said that law enforcement had initially said that, listen, this is likely a foul play situation. I wanted to quote the exact quote that they said, but essentially it was that they were investigating it initially, concerned about foul play situation, but recently has changed their opinion and quote said they are not investigating it as a murder. Well, I understand not a murder, meaning it wasn't on purpose, but is it being investigated as a homicide? That's the question. I could tell you that the family members are investigating it as a homicide. They believe that there's all these party goers and that someone knows something. There's no way someone can't know anything. I know everybody was highly intoxicated there, but they should know essentially when he left and essentially what happened to him, because this doesn't make sense. I'm going to stay on this case, and I'm very, very concerned. I hope some of you have some questions for me later regarding the Noah Presgrove case. I'm going to keep on it on my Twitter. And I hope to have a family member involved in the investigation on the show. We're working on lining that up. Hopefully we'll be able to get that lined up, because I think that would be very enlightening to everyone. I want to move on really quickly to Bryce and Dingler. Now, he's a young man. When I say young, 29-year-old father. He outside of Wichita Falls, Texas. Nocona, I believe, was the exact town. And this man, his truck was found at a truck stop off of a highway. And not only his truck, but his identification, his cell phone, his medication, which I always found that interesting that they said that. What medication? You know, was he sick and was he on antibiotic? Was he taking drugs for a mental condition? Nothing was made very clear, but it was said, written and released, that his medication was left behind and his cell phone. When I see that, all that tells me one of two things. One, sadly, he purposefully left that behind and had thoughts and left for the purpose of self-inflicting something. Okay, that's one reason that you'll find everybody's belongings left behind. A good example of that was Brian Laundrie. Brian Laundrie left everything right there in his bedroom. That was a clear example of either you're fleeing the country and you don't need anything like that, so you're on the run and you don't want anything that could be useful to help finding you, and you're certainly not going to be using your ID or anything like that. That's one reason. And the other reason is if you're planning on taking your life. So that's one possibility. The second possibility is that, and I equate this similar to the Caleb Harris case that we're going to talk about next, is that you left there because you pulled up and you were specifically going to meet with somebody. And so you jumped out of your car to meet with them, maybe got in the car with them, a vehicle with them, going someplace with them. And so you left everything hastily behind. You weren't concerned about it. You weren't concerned about your wallet. You weren't concerned about your truck, your medication, because you thought you were going to get back to it. You know, you just thought you were going to leave for a quick second. We've all done that, right? For a short amount of time. You know, you're going to jump into a car right next to you and you leave your stuff in your car and you jump in with them. Even cell phones. Not everybody's hooked on their cell phone. I tell you, sometimes I'll leave without my cell phone for hours. And, you know, I think, oh my gosh, I forgot my cell phone. But not everybody thinks of it as the number one thing. So while most of us have our cell phones with us all the time, some people don't. I know people who barely use a cell phone. My daughter actually, and she's a young woman with everybody hooked on their cell phone. She gave up social media. She went to one of those flip mechanical phones. It drove me crazy because you're not allowed to do a lot of things with those phones, like sending pictures and things like that. But she did that for several months. I only bring this up to say, I know it seems odd that he left his phone behind, but not everybody is hooked on the phone. But when I see everything left behind, it could be because he knew he didn't need it and he wasn't coming back purposefully, or he left hastily, or he knew he was going to be right back. So unfortunately, the fact him leaving all that and not returning to it, obviously as a law enforcement officer, as a loved one, you knew it was serious. You knew it was serious, that he is not going to just leave that all behind, that this is a tragic situation, no matter which direction it went to. So, right when I first started following that case, which was on, I believe, day 2 of his disappearance, maybe it was day 1, something like that, I knew it was serious because nobody leaves all of that behind for that length of time. So it was clear that this was going to end up tragically, I think. What is odd to me, honestly, is that he was just found. Let me tell you why that's odd. He was found within 2 miles of where his vehicle was found and where he was last seen. 2 miles. That's not very far away for search parties. Remember, a huge part of that is going to be highway and, different businesses along this highway. But where you want to search for somebody in this situation would be these fields. Places that either somebody could possibly go to self-harm, or a place where somebody would dump a body, right? So he was found within 2 miles. And the search party was made up of volunteers and of law enforcement. I found it very, very odd that it took a week to put together an appropriate search party to find him. A week. I would have been absolutely livid. Caleb Harris, within hours, the full force of law enforcement, of various law enforcement agencies, drones, helicopters, dogs, divers, search and rescue, volunteers, everyone was out there searching for Caleb. Why did it take law enforcement a week to put together an appropriate search party to find him? And I say that because of this. Depending on when he disappeared, maybe he could have been saved. If right when he disappeared, if they could have done this appropriate search, because he was found so close to where he disappeared from. So I found that very concerning. Right now, he's, had a whole, who knows how long, he's been in that field. We don't know what happened. We don't know if he did go off with somebody and later ended up in that field. There's so many different scenarios. So we don't know the state of decomposition, but we do know he was identified right away. So it's not a situation like Caleb that was unidentifiable. He was identified right away as being him. They're just trying to determine the manner of death and the cause of death. So we're going to stay on this one too, because I'm hoping we don't have another undetermined case. We got Noah Presgrove. His teeth are over here. Is lumps of hair. He's naked. He's got on mismatched shoes. He's on a desolate type road, and no one can say that this was a homicide. I mean, what are your other alternatives? Suicide and an accident. So we're going to stay on that one. Finally, I want to get to Caleb. Caleb's service was today. I hope I put it on my Twitter. in terms of if anybody wanted to go and listen into that service, the link is right there just to kind of make it easy for everyone. Just such a sad situation, but it was a celebration of life. His whole family are true believers. They are staunch, grassroots, Baptist believers. So the good news is that gives a family peace because they truly believe, of course, that Caleb is in a beautiful place right now, that he's in heaven. And it's beautiful and it's much better than his place on earth. And throughout the time he was missing, I think that really gave this family strength because they're the sort of people that believe if you don't believe like that, in other words, if you're sad and you're upset and you're out of control, then that shows your lack of faith in God. And that's a bad thing. So for them, their faith has kept them strong, and their faith has been really the fiber and backbone of their ability to carry on through the whole time before Caleb was gone, and certainly now when they know he's gone. But don't mistake that for them not wanting to get to the bottom of this case. Don't mistake that for that, because they're not weak and they want to know what happened to their son. I want to go over today Lieutenant Green's statements that he made. Lieutenant Green, or Chief, sorry, Assistant Chief Green, I want to say his correct title, is with the Corpus Christi Police Department. And to his credit, very much to his credit, he came out and made a statement. And I think that was really important because this was a case that so many in the community worked on. It didn't quite reach the case of a national case like Riley Strain or Sebastian Rogers. Those cases really blew up. These three all went missing at the same time. For some reasons, Caleb's case just sort of lagged behind in terms of media, mainstream media, and even social media exposure. But certainly for them in the Corpus Christi area, this was huge. So I was glad to see Assistant Chief Green come out. He said, first, the analysis of Caleb's remains that were available. This is important. That's why I want to read this verbatim. I don't want to miss anything. This isn't what he wrote. It's me listening to what he said, and then I wrote copious notes. He said that were available. That's pretty important to me as an investigator. Were there parts of his body that weren't available? That's what it sounds like to me. Okay. Caleb's remains that were available did not show obvious signs of homicide. Now, again, and I'm breaking this down, this is something that I had said prior to Lieutenant Green, or I'm sorry, Assistant Chief Green speaking. But again, what he means by that and what he actually said by that was that means there were no gunshot wounds that they could discern. There was no sign of, I think he used the word actually, a hatchet, or, stab wounds, something that was obvious sign of somebody murdering him. Again, the remains were in horrible shape, so much so that they had to go for DNA analysis to even know whose body it was. So that severely limits being able to tell the cause of death. In other words, why he died. Usually those causes can be asphyxiation, they can be blunt force trauma, it can be stabbing, it can be shot, all these different causes. That's not to be confused with manner. Manner of death is like suicide, accident, homicide. All right. He also said there were not, I'm putting this in quotes, enough remains there to preclude the possibility of foul play. So he was very clear that there's basically no way to tell much because, again, the remains were only partially available, and the remains were in such horrible shape that they couldn't preclude the possibility of a homicide. Okay. This was concerning to me. You ready for this one? Have a seat. He said, quote, "The investigation is almost over." Now, I've spoken personally to Assistant Chief Green. I found him to be such a wonderful person. In my discussions, he's great. But when I heard this, I was concerned. He said the investigation's almost over. I look at this as the investigation should be just beginning, because we have a body now. We have analysis. We're going to have an autopsy. Hopefully, we're going to have some toxicology from the tissue. We got DNA. We know it's him. They have some tools now to make hopefully some determinations. Again, and I am so sorry, I still haven't been able to find that expert on these waste management treatment facilities. But from everything I read about this facility, it's limited to stormwater, some stormwater, and they did have a big storm there, and wastewater from sewage, the sewage system. And they have grates specifically in place to stop larger objects, which would be like a body, like a head, like an arm, like a foot, anything, a bones, something solid like that. They have items in place to prevent that. A raccoon, a cat, whatever. It doesn't have to be a biological large thing, but an item, because they don't want that in the water because they're going to treat that. So it doesn't make any sense to me that the water went in there and somehow it got through these grates, unless it was so highly decomposed that it could slip through what they have in place to keep large debris out. Okay? I'm concerned if the investigation is truly over. He made it clear that it's still an ongoing investigation, but he said it's almost over. Why is it almost over? Is it almost over because they believe they're just going to have dead ends and they don't have the resources to really dig deep? Is it going to be like what we're seeing in the Presgrove case? Okay. He also said he cannot explain how Caleb got into the well. The treatment plant facility is secured. There's a steel grate over the well where Caleb was found. Imagine that. A steel grate. So body can't get through this grate. I'm picturing a grate, a wired or metal grate where a body can't get through. That's what he was saying. In other words, he's saying there's no way you could throw him into this well. Caleb didn't get into the well by being thrown into the well. He got into the well, I think, or what he was trying to say is somehow through the sewer system or the wastewater system or the rainwater system. That somehow his body got in there. Okay? So, and he's saying he went through, of course, that it's locked up and the fencing, just what we talked about and we knew about before, but he reiterated that. Okay? He also said that there was video footage, which is, again, what we had always understood that night, but it was such poor quality on the road. There was a lot of fog that night for those who have followed this case. This was like one of those foggy nights where you can barely see in front of you. And so because of that fog, the ability of the video footage was obstructed and ended up being a very, very poor quality. And he said they couldn't make anything out. They couldn't make out license plates. They could barely say things like a white pickup or a white four-door or whatever. That's how low of quality the video they had. So he confirmed what we had known, which was that we just didn't have video anywhere. And so he didn't talk about any wastewater plant video. So I think, as we thought there was no wastewater plant video, he discussed video and he did not mention any wastewater video. Okay. So he talked about, he couldn't remember the name of it, but I believe he was speaking of geofencing. So he did talk about that they pulled video cell information from the area. And he was like, what's that called? He said, well, anyway, I think he meant geofencing to find who was in that area. And we knew that. I mean, you have to know that in law enforcement, that's one of the first things you would do in a case like this is send out subpoenas to all the carriers, and you would get all that geofencing data. But any lead, he said, that was obtained from the geofencing was followed up on. In other words, the cell phones that were connected to those people, they interviewed the people that would have been in and around the area they chose to do the geofencing on. My question is, how far did they geofence? How far did they geofence? Did they just do his apartment complex? Did they go out a half a mile, quarter mile, 1 mile? I don't know. But, hopefully they went out further. And if they haven't, they need to do that. There's just so much more investigation to do, in my opinion. Let's see. Okay. In the days, this was really important. In the days following Caleb's disappearance, no manhole covers were missing. No manhole covers were missing. In other words, nothing was open, nothing was missing. They were all in place. And they physically looked inside every manhole. Physically looked inside, down into them. And they're very long. I think I have how long they are in my notes, but they're very long. In other words, many feet down that they go. And then again, that's for runoff, rain runoff that often goes into these and then filters onto this waste management facility. So he said they were all searched. He said he didn't search. They did not search the sewage drain or the sewage manholes. I think that was a mistake personally. I know it's horrible, hazmat suits, it's a horrible job. But if there was foul play and you were going to kill somebody, what a perfect place to discard the remnants of the body. He said they didn't search those. I think that was a mistake. He did say that they searched the sewage treatment plant, though, and no Caleb. That's, again, something that we knew. We knew that information, but he confirmed what we believed we knew. Okay, let me move on. He also said on April 17th, I knew it was mid-April, I think I said in the last podcast. On April 17th, and if you look at the footage, these very nice apartments where he lived, and there was this field that was across from there. And then so you have the apartment complex here, the road, there's that little bridge, then there's the field, and then there's the sewage treatment plant. It's all very visible within this area. That field was searched over and over and over again. We know that. But he specifically said on the 17th, they received information that there was a manhole cover now missing, now removed. Not missing as in gone, but not in place over the manhole on the 17th of April. So he sent officers out there a day later on the 18th to investigate. I probably would have sent them right then. I'm not trying to armchair quarterback. I just know how time sensitive everything is. He probably didn't have officers to go out, but nevertheless, he goes out there the next day. Sure enough, this manhole cover is off. And again, they look down in there, they see nothing. They also, thankfully, search the treatment plant. Nothing. Still nothing. He went missing on March 4th. Still nothing. So on April 17th, that sewage treatment plant was searched and there was no Caleb. But why was that manhole cover off? Did they miss him? Was he actually there then? And decomposed in that horrible, horrible environment, in that well. And finally, for whatever reason, probably, it had gone down low enough to find it. I don't know. They ended up fully draining it. I'm just saying, could that have been a possibility? They said they searched. I think we have to take them at their word. Could he have disappeared in 24 hours? In other words, already been flushed through and gone. We know that the water level was higher than normal. Because of how we know that is he specifically said that it was higher than normal and that the wastewater treatment plant actually did what they needed to do to essentially flush that or open whatever they needed to do to get that to drain, to get that manhole and that system to drain into the sewage treatment plant quicker, because they don't like water in those manholes, obviously, because somebody removed that cover. And if you jump in there and now you've got 10 feet of water, you can drown, even though again there's grates across them. So it's not making a lot of sense. But these are the things that he's giving us. These things he's giving us. Let's see. He says exactly his words. I want to do his words about this manhole cover because I do, for somehow this just sticks with me. He says it was quote unquote knocked off. Now, this is in a field. Nobody is going to be in this field. How did it get knocked off? For those of you who have not picked up or gotten into a manhole cover, they're heavy. They're thick. They're heavy. They're meant to stay in place. So he says it got knocked. That's his exact word. It got knocked off. So, I think that's interesting. Who knocked it off? How did it get knocked off? I think that could be part of this whole mystery. Okay. It is possible. These are his words. I'm repeating his words I took. It is possible that Tropical Storm Alberto that hit a week before Caleb's body was found. Okay? A week. Not a day, not 2 days. A week before. That's awful long time before. Could have washed Caleb's remains into the treatment facility. I found this very interesting that he said that. He said it was possible. Again, apparently there are these grates that are designed to keep large items out of the actual water that flows through. I also find it odd, just having gone through multiple hurricanes and seen, as an example, the water on our streets where it's a lake. You can't even drive through it. I mean, evacuation area, full on. But within days, that water is all dissipated and goes through the system. So we're talking a week. That's how long it would take to travel through a manhole or through the system and arrive at this sewage treatment plant. It's not adding up for me, but I do want to get that sewage treatment expert found. If anyone in chat knows somebody that works at a sewage treatment plant, please, please, please contact me through DM on Twitter. Let me know here. I will get a hold of you. It's very important that I find somebody. I'm still going to work some angles. I've actually just been so busy, but I'm going to work some angles. I have a wonderful intern, and I'll probably put that job on her plate straight away tomorrow. I've had her on some other jobs on the John O'Keefe case. So, any event, okay, he wanted to make this very clear, and we touched on this in our last live. He said there is no serial killer in Corpus Christi. Yes, there's been bodies found. Yes, they've been a young man. Yes, people have disappeared. But he said they've specifically looked at things like the modus operandi. They've looked at things concerning how they were killed. They've conducted extensive interviews. And that he wanted to just quash that rumor because it's untrue. And I believe him. I think that, certainly this was likely not, the effort of some serial killer. But I at this point, I just can't believe strapping young Caleb, 21-year-old, again, a huge athlete, a huge outdoorsman, common sense guy, somehow ended up in a sewage treatment plant. I don't believe he fell off that bridge and fell through. He would have been found. I don't believe he was in that manhole earlier. He would have been found. I don't believe he was in the sewage treatment plant. He would have been found. He was found in that sewage treatment plant. So in that time frame, which tells me somehow he was placed there or ended up there independent from an accident. That's how I see it so far. But, there's a lot more to do. That's my initial inclination, again, from the facts we know. Just like with Noah Presgrove. Doesn't make sense that was an accident for his tooth to be over here. Could he have accidentally been hit by a car? Yes, but that's still a homicide. All right. Okay, serial killer. I think I just have a couple of more notes here. There's no serial killer. Okay. He also said, this was the last thing, they have no final autopsy report yet. So they're still waiting probably on talks to see if they can glean. I think depending on what pieces they have, should be able to clean something. I was thinking today how just horrible to, not be able to bury your entirety of your son. Anyway, sad day today. All right, I want to take your comments. Let's see. Here we go. Oh, okay. I've been told the video is ready. I just wanted to, our intern put together a really nice little quick video just to show the different faces of Noah Presgrove. So yes, if you could please play that, that would be super. Thank you. Yeah, I thought that was really important just to show the different faces of him. I'll post that on my Twitter too. But one of the things I wanted to mention about Noah was he was in large part raised by his grandmother. His mother, he had a difficult upbringing. His mother struggled with addiction. And, it's just such a difficult situation. His brother is really leading the charge to get answers. Again, I'm very hopeful to maybe have his brother come on and answer some questions for us. I'd like to entertain questions from you all right now before we sign off. Probably do about 10 questions. Hi, Val. Thanks for being here. Someone from the party knows what happened. I couldn't agree with you more. It doesn't make sense that he just wanders off and never comes back. No matter how intoxicated people are, I think there's some answers out there that at least they haven't been made public. And I'm hoping that the investigation the family is doing will be able to glean some of those answers. M. Finn, greetings from Ireland. That is just the coolest thing, when international people, let's see, it's 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5 hours. I mean, it's so late. Thank you for being here with us. I know it's very early morning hours, I think, for you. Poor Caleb, I really feel for his family, and I wonder, did he trip and fall, or did something hit him by accident with their car? So I don't think there's any evidence at all that he would have been hit by a car and ended up in that sewage treatment plant. Could he have somehow fallen in a manhole and ended up there? It doesn't make any common sense to me that could have happened. So I'm struggling with any other answer besides some sort of foul play at this point. I'm really not buying that he went through that storm drain. But if we get somebody on here that says, listen, these storm drains are huge, and it is possible that the storm drain sent him in, I still want to know how we got in the storm drain to begin with. So, law enforcement has to look at all angles. We're going to look at all angles. It's not making a lot of sense to me. I know that the Harris family has hired a retired FBI agent. I'm so glad that they did. And he's going to be looking into this. I have a very good friend that's down there. I've talked about him before, that he was actually down there, and I'm probably going to get him to help me on the storm drain issue and see if he can line up somebody from that plant to talk to us. At least my fingers are crossed that might work. I don't ever like to interview people who could possibly be witnesses, so I want to be very careful with that. But I might see if we can, find somebody that had nothing to do with locating the body or anything like that, but knows about or works in that industry down there. Okay. I do have multiple contacts, in fact. There we go. Conduit. Lovely. Okay, we'll get together on that. That's great to know. Any other questions tonight? Let's see. Hi, Alan. Alan and I go way back, because he and I, back in the Petito days, that's where first, when I say know him, through social media. It's funny. You really do get to know people. Thank you, Alan, for being here. G. White, I just tuned in. Pardon my question. Is it being said Caleb was in the manhole? No, it's not being said he was in there. We only know he showed up in what they call a well, this waste treatment. I mean, if you can imagine, just sewage and just, a scene out of the Shawshank. It's, where all the sewage goes, and some runoff rainwater also flows into there. But we know in April there was a manhole cover removed. And so some people are speculating possibly, well, maybe he fell in there. But on the 18th, it was searched, as was the treatment plant. He wasn't found. But I want to know why that manhole cover was removed. And if somebody removed it, could they have put, especially since Chief Green said, from the parts of the body we have, or words to that effect, whatever I read out earlier, it just doesn't make sense to me that the manhole cover was on through all their searches, and then all of a sudden on the 17th it was off. It also begs the question, who found the manhole cover off? Why are they out in the middle of this field? Anyway, a lot of questions on that front. Melissa Joy, any possibility the feds would take over? pretty much zero possibility. This venue lies squarely in Corpus Christi, but possibly the Texas Rangers. They're very much involved, and maybe they would take it over. But right now, Corpus Christi has the lead, and they've said that they're close to concluding their investigation. G. White, what size are the pipes from the manhole to the lift station? So my understanding is, and this is from, I won't say who it is, but somebody who was out on that search, that it's has a 24-inch diameter, so a 2-foot diameter. That's what I was told. So you can imagine a 2-foot diameter. Caleb was 6'1". He's a big guy. You've seen pictures of him. I mean, you would literally have to kind of go like this. Even me, I seem to be about 2 feet across. So it doesn't make sense. So the manhole cover was there, and then it wasn't. Yes, that's my whole point. It was there. We know it was there. They checked all the manhole covers. Everything was in place. And then on April 17th, somebody in that field discovered the manhole was off, of course concerned, knowing about the Caleb Harris case, maybe even out there searching for clues, and said the manhole cover was off. And police went out the next day, searched that manhole. They had it drained down because there was a lot of water in there, apparently. They had it drained, sucked out, and checked the sewage treatment plant. No Caleb. Cat B, does anyone know where his dog went? So it really wasn't his dog per se. It was it was a roommate. It actually, the dog belonged to a grandmother of one of the kids, and it was too much for her to take care of. So this group of boys essentially decided to take on this dog. By the way, that's very normal. I found out, my son ended up doing that. A lot of young men, when they're in college, they want dogs. And I could tell you, when I went to visit my son up at college, every guy had a dog. They're a lot to take care of, but they all had dogs. Dogs everywhere. Hello from Maine. That is a place I really want to go to. I've never been to Maine. It's one of the few states I haven't been to. I'm going to get up there. I've heard it's gorgeous. I had a trip planned there and ended up changing direction on it, but that is Ireland's a true big bucket list, but Maine is up there as well. All right, Moxie, I'm so sorry to ask, but can they tell if the remains found separated naturally or from decomposition? Such a great question, Moxie. And we're not getting any information they can tell that. I'm really trying to figure out, and there are pictures. There was a video taken, and I actually had somebody DM me, which I truly appreciate, with very specific details about the body and what it looked like, and how it was found and so forth. And what I was told, and again, this is from somebody who I truly believe saw the body, and then actually from another person who saw the body, and then somebody else sent me a picture that was from this video footage. And it was really hard to tell for me, but that maybe the torso could be seen. You couldn't see the arms or the head, but you could see a torso. So I don't know, Moxie. That's such a great question. And I need to get these questions answered. I need to get on here to a pathologist to help us answer and to get down to the nitty-gritty on those questions. Yes, I do. Something untoward, I love that word, happened to Caleb. Yes, it just seems like foul play could be involved here. That's what the clues tell us so far. Maybe that'll change, but I don't think he's going to go in a manhole on his own. I don't think he's going to slip and fall in a manhole when they said all the covers were on. So it's not making any sense to me. Sea fog. Yes. Corpus Christi is right there on the water. There's all these waterways there. Been there several times when I was stationed in Dallas and Houston, and that fog rolls in. It's thick like pea soup. You can barely see, several feet in front of your face. You're basically in a cloud, a thick cloud, and that happened to be the night. Um, G. White, just checking. Manhole in the cornfield is a sewage well, not a stormwater well. No. So the manhole in the cornfield is a stormwater. It leads to the sewage treatment, but it was not a sewage manhole. There are sewage manholes. Those were never checked, still haven't been checked. But this would have been a runoff, when it rains and the water goes down in there, and then it helps go into the sewage treatment system to help dilute all the sewage in part. Okay. Let's see. Any other questions? I'm going to take two more. If there's anybody else who has anything? All right. Can anyone confirm bones were found outside the lift station in ditch off of Lexington? No, but this is interesting. I did read that there was some sort of something that clogged up the system at one point, and people were speculating about that being a bone. Again, we need a wastewater management specialist on here to help clear that up, and it'd be really good if we could get one from this treatment facility or one nearby in Texas, because I think it's just crucially important to really understand that system, and I hope law enforcement is doing the same thing. They need to understand exactly what grates and what system is used to keep big debris out of the water. Okay, Jotlems. I was just wondering if Ellie followed up on the witness who said they saw or heard the altercation around the same time. Can you confirm? My understanding is I don't know about any altercation at that time that was at all related to Caleb. So from my information that I know, and I feel like I have a pretty decent grasp on this information, that no. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, there's none of his roommates were involved in this. No one in the complex. The marijuana dealer that was, supplying some of these kids with marijuana to smoke in this complex, nothing like that is involved with this. He literally walked away, I think probably to meet somebody. And I think that is something horrible happened. And I think later he was discarded in the system. That's what I think. From what I know, that's kind of my hypothet that I think makes the most sense to me right at this point. Kind of a working theory, but obviously more clues will come in. And when more clues come in, they can steer you in other directions. Brittany Jade, hello from San Antonio. Love San Antonio. Love that river that goes through there. I've been following this case from day one. CCPD initially suspected foul play. Won't this help that investigation? They did. And I think what I'm concerned about is this. When you have a body so decayed like this, they're not going to be able to have a medical examiner say unequivocally that they can determine what we call the manner of death. I mean, look at, hate to digress here, but the John O'Keefe case. I mean, you couldn't have any of those medical examiners, and they had a body that had been frozen. So, in other words, preserved. That an autopsy was completed right away without any decomposition. And they won't even say exactly. And that happens sometimes with medical examiners. Look at the medical examiner in the Greenberg case. She was stabbed 20 times in her back and in her head. I'm not trying to digress. I'm just saying that medical examiner initially said homicide, and a couple days after a meeting, changed it to suicide. Somehow she stabbed herself in the back using 2 different knives, by the way. Anyway, so I'm losing my trust in medical examiners. I had a terrible, terrible incident one time with a medical examiner. We had a homicide. Well, I shouldn't say that. We had a death, and I was case agent on that death. And well, I was the supervisor in charge, but ended up running that case. And immediately got an ME. It was on like a Saturday or Sunday, and we ended up doing it at the hospital, I believe. And as I recall, not at the morgue, at the hospital. And anyway, he came out on scene, and I kid you not, he didn't have a camera. He was talking on the whole time he was having an affair, because I could hear him talking, from his wife, meeting up with some girl. He was having me like, yeah, here, help me weigh the liver, help me weigh the heart. Let's write all this down. I forgot a camera. I had to go back to the FBI office in the middle of this autopsy, come back to take photographs for him because he forgot his camera. So I've had some pretty negative interactions with very incompetent MEs. And after the John O'Keefe case, seeing that ME on the stand, after what's going on in the Greenberg case with those MEs, I'm at a loss with some of these cases with the MEs. So I'm hoping that this ME can provide some results that can, cause this investigation to go further down the road. All right. Why did he not have arm and leg fractures? Okay, so you're talking about, we're going back to Presgrove. That I don't know. I just want to make sure, and I wrote down all his medical. Let me just double check. I didn't read that off. I kind of just went from my memory. But let me just look. Let's see. Let me see. Head injury, he had a 8-inch laceration. He had, in fact, the laceration was so huge that it revealed his bone. So this is a huge laceration. Cuts, scrapes on his left eyebrow, cheek, eye, ear, neck, and tongue. When I see that, I picture something that was very violent that happened where his tongue was exposed. He also had a split middle base of the skull, life-threatening spinal vertebrae fractures. He had rib fractures, shoulder blade fracture. So good. I should have clarified. So this is the clavicle. It was actually a shoulder blade. Imagine the force to break that scapula. And punctured lungs. Both lungs punctured, probably from the rib breakage. I did not see that he had broken arms or legs, but remember, depending on where he got hit, they wouldn't necessarily be broken. It all depends on where that violent impact took place as to what's going to break. Okay. Is it normal for the medical examiner to make a statement so quickly after the body was found to make the determination? It seemed rather quick. So if you're talking about Caleb's was not quick. Caleb's still hasn't been done. But if you're talking about Noah, who I think you're talking about, that wasn't quick either. I mean, he died in September of 2023, and so the autopsy results, I believe, came out about 2 months ago. So, or at least were released to the public. So it's been quite a long time. So it wasn't quick. Caleb's was about 3 weeks, but again, all they released there was the DNA match to determine it was Caleb Harris. So that's where we're at, and we're waiting on the autopsy for Bryce. Let's see. Oh, anything else? I'm going to go with two more questions tonight, and then I'm going to let you all get on to your wonderful evening. So if my mods have any other great questions, I'd love to take them. Blanco, hi, welcome. Thanks for being here again. Don't forget to like and share the stream. It helps the algorithm. Yes, everybody, I tell you, if you do like it, I hope you subscribe. I hope you stay. I hope you like this program. And we'll keep doing what we call Missing Monday, but sometimes we have specials. We had a special yesterday on the appearance of Kimberly Cheadle, who was the director of the Social Security. Again, today she resigned, for those of you who don't know. But we'll have specials, but you can always count on us being right here on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then sometimes specials. And then about once a month, we're going to release what I call the long-term interviews. We have several of those on there. We have a really one of my favorite interviews with John Douglas's partner, Greg McCrary, who's my personal one of my mentors. We work at the same place. He's more of a mentor now. He's handed off all of his cases, but his expert witness evaluation is unbelievable. And I just can't even believe I get to work under a mentor like that. It's unbelievable. Also, Dr. Bricado, who I consider to be one of the best in terms of murder psychology, the psychology of these people who commit mass murders. He's looked at every mass murder ever committed. He is a brilliant mind, and he joined me early on. If you like things more a little bit easier going, but still we talked all about cases, Brian Enton and I had a great interview. I interviewed Chris Swecker, who was in charge of all criminal investigations for the FBI for years under Sessions. He was amazing. Actually, I divided his interview into multiple parts. We still haven't finished editing some of that. But if you want to understand how some of these people with just a vast amount of experience, what they have to say about different ongoing cases. We talked about John Bonet. We've talked about a lot of different cases. Peterson. I mean, we hit on some big cases. And then also generally, we talked about a lot of things. So hopefully you can catch some of those long-term videos. They're under video. And let me know what you think. And if you'd like to see other types of interviews, please let me know. Okay, I'm going to take two more questions. We're going to go with Sunny Bunnies. Would any of Caleb's internal organs be available? I don't think there's any chance that there's any internal organs available. I don't want to 100% say no, but from what I'm understanding, it was in a severe state of decay. And so I don't think so. Great question, Sun Bunny. All right, last one. Leslie Romack, thanks for joining us. There was talk of things on his computer when he was noticed to be missing. That was the emergent part of the missing person report. Have they said any more about the beginning of the investigation? Such a great question. I know you're talking about Caleb here because, yes, they took all of the information from his gaming devices, from his cellular devices, from his computers, from his iPad, all of that, and tried to discern who he was in communication with that night. That was important. And from my understanding, those leads have led to some dead ends. I think interviews were conducted and people were cleared, from my understanding. All we can do is trust law enforcement did thorough and complete interviews of everyone that he was supposed to meet, met, that was in that area where he was supposed to conduct meetings. All we can do is hope, that they did a proper investigation and and that their geofencing was done in the proper areas, and that it was vast. Because if it wasn't done, then it's not going to be a good investigation. All right, I'm going to take one more. Dixie Doodle says thanks, and Bishop and Bell, thanks. And yes, thanks again. We're going to let you all go for this evening. Again, I appreciate it. And until the next time, may justice be served.